Hello YouTube and welcome to the channel. Now then, a very exciting day today because we get to review this for the channel. It's an RC LDP06. It's basically a 4x4 model of a Unimog truck. Now this has very kindly been donated to the channel for review by Banggood, so big thumbs up to Banggood, thank you very much. There will of course be a link in the description to where you can get one of these from. Before we crack the box open, let's just have a quick look at the box. It's a 1/12 scale model, 4x4 of course. Let's have a quick look at the features on the side. We've got lights, damping effect, so it's probably just got some springs. Rubber tyres, stainless steel beam frame, metal leaf springs. It says gate bridge axles, but I think they are portal axles to be honest. Not sure what they mean by CVT. It's normally constant velocity transmission, but I doubt very much whether it's got one of those. Could be wrong. It says metal gears. We will see that. We'll have a look at that for ourselves in a minute. Proportional steering, and basically remote controlled 2.5 gig, 2.4 gigahertz basically. So anyway, enough waffle. What we really want to know is what this thing is like. So I am genuinely a little bit excited. So let's crack this box open and find out. Right then, in the box we have some instructions, we have some spare parts, we have a little USB battery charger. It looks like we've got a radiator for the motor and some indicators, etc. I'm presuming we have to assemble this lot onto the truck. We also have our transmitter, and this thing is tiny. It looks like it's got several functions, which I'm not 100% sure what they do at the moment. I'll have a look at the instructions. But what's that? It seems to be on the side. Oh right, okay. Throttle trim, pilot lamp, which I'm presuming just turns the lights on and off. Channel 3 and headlights. Oh, we'll have a look anyway in a minute. Last but not least, we have the actual truck itself, and this is of course a model of a Unimog. Now, straight off the bat, this thing looks absolutely fantastic. Let's have a quick look underneath there. Okay, there, yeah, portal axles. We've got a set of portal axles, which for those of you who don't know what they are, there's basically a little gearbox at the end of the axle shaft that takes the drive down a certain distance, so it basically improves ground clearance underneath. I think on these, I might be mistaken, but I think the drive ratio is slightly different. So I think these portal axles actually reduce the shaft speed, so they give you a bit more torque. Initial impressions, I must admit, is this thing is absolutely fantastic. I am a bit of a fan of the Unimog, so this model is absolutely fantastic. We've got leaf springs. It looks like a very similar setup, but different from WPL, etc. We've got some rear lights there. What else we've got? I think we've got a little 260 motor there. I mean, it's quite a fair sized truck. How much performance that'll give it, I don't know, but I suppose we'll find out soon enough. And quite a unique transmission setup, I must admit. Nothing like any MNs or WPLs I've seen in the past. So anyway, we've got the wiring loom there for the lights, etc. It's quite interesting actually. Anyway, let's get some of these bits and pieces out of the bag. Let's put the battery on charge, and let's assemble this truck. Now before we go any further, I thought I'd show you where the battery lives. It's under the bonnet, which is quite traditional in some of these little models. It is in fact the same battery that you get in an MM models, D99, etc. This is the new type with the 3-wire connector. So if you did have if you've got an MM models, etc., you know, if you bought one of these, you'd have spare batteries for it, obviously. It is pretty cool how it just slips in the front there, I must admit. Now the transmitter, unusually, it's tiny, this thing is, it takes 2 AAA batteries. Unfortunately, Sod's Law dictates I haven't got any, so I'm going to have to go and buy some. But yes, if you bought one of these, you have to supply the batteries, and they take 2 AAAs in the transmitter. Now just put a bit of charge in the battery just to make sure that the truck works. And before I go any further, I did forget to mention a couple of things. That these tyres are really soft and compliant. They look great, they do. I mean, for a little budget crawler, they seem quite soft. The front doors open and close, which is really cool. And the sides of this bed area at the back here, they fold down, and I think you can remove them completely if you wanted just a flat load area at the back. I think I mentioned I thought it had rear lights. It doesn't. That bit of wiring loom there in fact goes to the on-off switch, which is located at the back. There's no rear lights in there or LEDs or anything. The transmitter functions, I've worked out what they are. Now the A button on the transmitter, that is a throttle dual rate, so we've got a slow and a fast mode. The B appears to be for channel 3. Now I'm thinking this thing might have an optional winch available for it soon, because there is a big hole in the bumper there, and there looks to be, what I can see at the back of it, a bracket to accept some sort of a little electronic winch. So I'm wondering if this thing at some future point will have a winch available for it, which would be really cool. And the C button actually controls the light, so we can have them on. They can flash. I'm not quite sure why you'd want that. And if we press it again, they go off completely. But I'll tell you what we might do before we actually take this thing out, while I'm waiting for the battery to fully charge. I might take a bit of this bodywork off and have a quick look underneath, and because I'm intrigued to see what this lot looks like. Right, I've removed the bodywork, and it's super easy to do so. There's only 4 screws that hold the entire thing on, and then you've got excellent access to all the components underneath. Some really interesting little features I've found on this truck so far, one of which is the portal axles do have a reduction. I think it's roughly 2 to 1, because you have to rotate the central shaft here twice in order to get one rotation of the wheels. So there's some really good mechanical advantage in these little portal axles. Second of which is, I was expecting the receiver board to be up front, but it isn't. It's at the rear in this tray here. Now this thing is not going to be waterproof, but if you want to waterproof it, it should be a fairly straightforward operation. Now then, I mentioned to you that I thought it possibly might have a winch accessory to follow. Well, if we have a look on the board, there's a 3-pin plug for it here, so I definitely think there must be one on the cards. There's also several ports for what I think could be possibly be extra lighting. I'm not sure what these are going to be for, but they could be for like extra lighting possibly. Moving up to the front now, we've actually got an axle mounted 3-wire steering servo, which is fantastic because that actually eliminates all of that weird steering pull you get when the servo is connected rigidly to the frame. We've got our little 260 motor there connected to this reduction box. I might just pull this off actually and have a quick glance inside. But it looks as though there may just about be room to squeeze possibly a 370 motor in there. I don't know, just about enough room between that and the servo. There is a lot of play in these axles, I must admit. A lot of steering play as well. But on a crawler, on a little trail truck like this, probably not much of an issue. But it does seem as though this thing is quite well thought out. Right, I've just taken our little gearbox out, and this is interesting. There's a little transfer case at the back with 3 gears in it. They're all on little brass sort of bushings, plastic gears. But what's the bet? That eventually we'll get like a metal upgrade gear set for this. There's no grease in here, so I think I'll put some in before we go any further. This is the really interesting bit, though. If I can keep my finger on there, stop everything dropping out. Are we going to see a twin motor version? Because there's another series of holes here with the reduction gear inside that would accept another 260 motor. So is there a possibility at some point, or an upgrade, or are we going to see like a special version of this with twin 260 motors in it? So that's really interesting. It's a little bit crap that they haven't put some sort of a blanking plate over this, because I can imagine dirt and rubbish and all sorts is going to end up in there through these holes. But that's certainly really interesting, and that could explain, actually, now that I think about it, that could explain, oh, let's try not to wreck everything, why we've got so many free ports on the board. I wonder if one of those free ports is for a second motor. Anyway, I'll try and reassemble this thing. Actually, I don't think I've mentioned the price. 61 quid or $73. So far, this isn't a particularly expensive RC, really, and you do get some really cool little features on it. So anyway, I'll try and assemble all this back together without breaking anything or leaving anything off. We'll wait till the battery charges up, and then I'm dying to see what this thing is like. Right, cab's back on, and before I chuck the rest of it back together, I thought we'd check out the portal axles. They do indeed have all metal gears and little brass bushings to support them. Plastic wheel hexes though, which is the only bit that's probably going to let it down. There is no grease in any of these either, so that's one thing to watch out for, something you'd perhaps want to do before you took it out on the trail. There is a couple of things to watch out for though when you're putting it back together or disassembling it. Is the wiring loom on this was very tight, and I actually got a bare wire at the front from the battery connector. Because whoever had stuck it in the truck, I think they'd cut it on the edge of the frame here, so that might be one thing to check. If you're having issues with your Unimog, check the wiring harness, because you might find you've got a bare wire, or one of these plugs has pulled out because the wiring harness is a bit too tight. Anyway, I'm going to chuck the remainder of the bodywork on and take it from there. Also, while I'm here, these tyres aren't glued onto the rims. You will need to do that because they do quite easily rotate on the tyres. Do quite easily rotate on the rims. So I'm going to do that before we take it out on the trail. Right then, back inside, what did we think of LDRC's Unimog here, now that we've tried it on the trail? Let's not break with tradition, let's go for some good and bad points. Let's start with the bad points first, and these to me personally are sort of minor little niggles. Transmitter, it does feel very small, cheap and nasty. It did work perfectly, however, and it does work reasonably well, but in direct opposition to the truck, which feels a decent quality product, the transmitter you get isn't very nice at all. Now the second thing I didn't like about it, and this is just basically a niggle, considering the price of the truck, is it does lack a little bit of low down throttle control. It is sort of one of those that sort of jerk, you have to give the trigger a bit of a pull and it sort of jerks, and there's just lacking that little bit of finesse low down, but I'm being really hard on it and really picky. The third thing I've got written down on my list is the tyres. They're quite soft and compliant, and to be fair to them, it was quite damp out there and slippy. They just lacked a little bit of grip on certain surfaces, on the rocks and some of the logs. And I think with a more aggressive tread pattern, some fatter tyres, I think this thing will be transformed off-road. I really do. And the fourth thing, obviously drawing attention to that bare wire on the electrics. It's on the power wire from the battery, so that could have been nasty if they'd have sort of touched together. So, and how actual tight the wiring loom is inside, so that could cause you a few issues later on. And with regards to the bad points on this truck, they're really just minor niggles. Right then, that's enough negativity. Let's go for some good points, and there are plenty written down on my list. The first of which is the centre of gravity of this thing. It must be quite low down, even considering this is a hard body on frame design. Normally they tend to be quite top heavy. This thing seems to carry its weight really low down, and it didn't topple over half as much as something like my D99. The next thing I loved about this thing was these portal axles. I mean, considering this is a relatively cheap truck, I mean 61 quid, $73, you get a set of these portal axles with them, and they are an absolute game changer. They really are. They just allow that bit much more ground clearance, and it just makes a massive difference. Also, talking about ground clearance, the actual positioning of the motor and the transmission, it's sort of tucked away underneath. I mean, there's no gearbox sticking out like you do get on an MN or a WPL. It's quite smooth under here. There's loads of clearance, and again, that just helps massively. The way they've tucked that gearbox and motor sort of inside the frame rails, absolutely brilliant. The next thing I've got written down on my list is the turning circle and the manoeuvrability of this thing. It's excellent. We've got a reasonable amount of steering articulation, and that again, when you're off-road, clambering around little trails, etc., that makes a massive difference. Now then, battery life. I fully charged this battery before I took it out to test it, and I filmed the entire woodland portion of the video and the garden portion of the video with the same battery without having to charge it again. I also ran it around the garden for a bit, trying to discharge it to see how long it would last. In the end, I got bored. This thing, or the battery that comes with this thing, I know it's only a little 260 motor, so that probably helps, but the battery life on this thing is absolutely epic. Now, the other thing I love about this is the way it looks, and I think they have done an absolutely bang-up job of making this look like a proper little Unimog truck. I mean, it looks kick-ass when you're driving it around the trail. It really does. And I dread to think, if you were to buy a hard body, scale hard body like this, sort of in 1/12 scale, exactly how much it would cost you to buy. I mean, it would probably be more than the purchase price of this entire truck. And last but not least, one of the best features of this truck is the price. I mean, 61 quid, $73 these days. It's not a lot of money to spend, and you really do get some interesting and neat little features, you know, including those portal axles, which really do make a massive difference. I mean, it's just really well thought out and laid out, to be honest, and it's probably one of the best little sort of cheap scale hard body trucks you can buy out there. Right, in conclusion time, would I recommend LDRC's Unimog to you guys? And I'm going to say absolutely yes. It's a fantastic little budget trail truck, really good out of the box. I'm going to stick my neck out, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but it is better out of the box than my D99 was. And I'm pretty sure it's better out of the box than the vast majority of sort of RTR WPLs as well. I'm going to get some hate for that. And if you're in the market for a little scale off-road truck and you're thinking about buying an MM models or WPL, I would seriously look at LDRC's Unimog before you make your decision. As ever, if you fancy this truck, there will be some links in the description below to where you can get one from. Banggood have very kindly supplied some promo codes, hopefully for this and some other bits and pieces. A big thank you to Banggood as well for sponsoring this video again. Once again, guys, if you found this video of some interest and use, please give it a big thumbs up, and please, if you're feeling like it, subscribe to the channel. It makes a massive difference. Once again, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you again very soon. Thank you.